I begin with a word in English, and the rest is in Italian. Through the ministry of Peter, you have called me to carry that cross and to be blessed with that mission.
And that was newly elected Pope Leo XIV speaking at the Sistine Chapel earlier today, holding his first Mass. It comes just one day after being chosen by the cardinals, the second day of the conclave. Pope Leo XIV making history, becoming the first American pontiff to be elected as the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church. And joining us for the second time this week is Matheson Miller, Senior Research Fellow at Acton Institute. And thanks so much, Michael, for joining us again.
Thank you for having me back. It's good to be with you. It's a great day.
Is indeed. So let's begin simply with your reaction to the election of the first American Pope in the history of the Catholic Church. Did you ever think that you would see an American Pope in your lifetime?
I have to say I did not, but I think it's great, and I think it's great that, I think someone asked maybe his brother before he went into conclave. They said, "Did you talk to him?" He said, "You're kind of a long shot, but you're a runner. You're a papabile. There's a possibility you might be Pope." He said, "It's never going to happen. They're not going to elect American." And here, lo and behold, we have an American Pope, and I think beautifully we have an American Pope who also has lived in Latin America. He's traveled. He's spent time in the Vatican. So, and I think in his opening statements, when he spoke in Italian and Spanish and Latin, he also sent the message that he is the Pope of the Universal Church. So it's great. I'm very happy about it.
So was Cardinal Robert Prevost from Chicago on your radar at all? Quite a few names were tossed about. Well, two in particular when the conclave began, but his name was not among them.
No, yeah, he was. I mean, one of my colleagues at the Acton Institute put him kind of as a possibility, but not. He was definitely not in the immediate of 2 or 3 or 4 that everybody thought might be Pope. And as I said, when we spoke the other day, there's that famous line that you go into the conclave of Pope, you come out a cardinal. So somebody went in with maybe they thought a low chance, and he came out very quickly. It was faster than I thought. And so there we have it, Pope Leo XIV. It's a great thing.
And what does his selection mean to the world during these very uncertain times globally?
Well, I think it's very interesting that he took the name Leo XIV. So Pope Leo, obviously he's the 14th Pope Leo. The last Pope Leo we had was in the late 1800s, Pope Leo XIII. And in fact, in 1891, wrote a very important encyclical, a papal letter that's in Latin called Rerum Novarum. And it's about the new things, the things that were changing. That was a time of the Industrial Revolution. There was Marxist revolutionary. There was communism was coming up, socialism, all these debates on liberalism and how to think about things. And so I think it's very interesting that Pope Leo evokes maybe in his choice of that name that we are also in tumultuous times. But as St. Augustine says, we're always in tumultuous times. So.
And, I think it was one of his brothers who commented after he was elected Pope that he doesn't think, at least initially, you'll see much difference between Pope Leo XIV and Pope Francis. They are, in his words, two of a kind, is what he said. With his selection, what message, if any, do you think the Catholic Church is sending to the world about the direction of the Church in the 21st century?
Maybe the first thing I would say, and it sounds funny because it's almost like a joke, but the Pope is indeed Catholic. And so the Pope's job, the Bishop of Rome, is the successor to Peter. He's not the successor to Francis, he's the successor to Peter. And his job is to proclaim the gospel. And I think one of the things we saw today in his homily, he gave a very beautiful homily, and he really, I think, set out the mission. He talks about himself as successor of Peter and the great weight that is. It's a heavy weight, I think, that really no man can bear. And so this is why we believe that, the grace of the Holy Spirit is going to guide him and help him in this. Today, every Catholic Mass in the world was offered up in prayers for the Pope. So it's a very heavy weight that he takes on. But it was a very beautiful homily. He said, I think, set out some of his message. He said, in the famous gospel where Peter declares that Jesus is the Messiah, Jesus is the Christ, when Jesus says, "Who do people think I am?" And Pope Leo said, at that time, there were wealthy people in Caesarea Philippi who cares about Jesus? He's not important. Maybe he's a charlatan. Other people who thought, well, Jesus is a great man, a great teacher, but very few recognize Jesus as the Messiah. And he said, today we're in a very similar situation. We have wealth and power and poverty and wealth and power and money and technology. Jesus is not important. Or maybe we think Jesus is just a great teacher. And here I think Pope Leo set out really the message of his papacy that we have to affirm that Jesus Christ indeed is risen from the dead and he is the Messiah. And so I think that's the message right there, and the role of the Pope, the Bishop of Rome.
And do you think that this newly elected Pope will inspire, listening to you talk there, more people to return to the church and continue some of that momentum of bringing more young people in the church that a lot of people say began under Pope Francis?
Well, I think that a lot of young people are coming to the church. I mean, sometimes a lot of young people are leaving. There's a lot of loneliness. There's a lot of anxiety in the world. But I think really if you look since John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and Pope Francis, and I think Leo will continue this, a lot of young people have been moved to the message of Christ. They haven't heard it before. And so one of the themes that continues, and you could really hear this in the homily, I think, this morning, is this idea of the new evangelization. And that's to not only bring the gospel to places that have never heard it, but also to bring the gospel and the message of Jesus to places in America and Europe that were maybe formerly Christian and not Christian anymore. And I think that just the way he articulated that message, and I think there was a certain a certain stability. He was there. He was very calm. He was very peaceful. I think that in a world that's tumultuous, as you said, and also a world where people are very anxious, there's a lot of data on anxiety and loneliness. They're looking for real, authentic meaning. And I think that was one of the key messages that he set out today.
Michael Matheson Miller, Senior Research Fellow at the Acton Institute there in Grand Rapids. We sure appreciate you joining us today and joining us a couple times this week and giving us some insight on this process. And we appreciate your time. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Happy to be with you. Thank you.